Greetings, greetings, family, and welcome to the Art of Rising. Here we are, for real. We have a wonderful, powerful brother here on the show today, and he's willing to give us some of his time. And I'm sure you're willing to accept some of the codes in life that he has to give. So, if you stick around to the end of the show, we have a wonderful offering for you. So just stick around. You know what kind of things we do around here, and you're gonna want to tap into that. So without any further ado, I'll introduce my good brother. His name is Keeper.
Hey,
Welcome,
hey,
Keeper Cantrell-Whitney. Welcome to the show.
how are you, Omar? Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you for being here, brother. I know there was a little rough going in the beginning. I didn't click live, but here we are.
I didn't notice a thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. So I came across your profile and I was learning so many things about you and some of the deeper issues and how you've come out of some of that darkness, right?
Right.
So here at the OMZL Healing Sanctuary and the podcast of the Art of Rising, our mission is really to elevate people, elevate their consciousness, to get them to know who they are so they can be self-aware, right? And also get out of any situation that they're in, because
Mhm.
ultimately we are the director and the star of our own movie, right? So with that said, I'd love to hear a little bit about currently where you're at, where do you live, and
Ah,
what are some of the projects you're doing these days.
okay, some of the projects that I'm doing. But first of all, Omar, it's a pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Mhm.
And the work that you are doing, the advocacy that you are doing on behalf of men in doing your retreats. I understand that you just had your first international
Yeah,
retreat. I mean,
exciting. Super exciting.
yeah, you're just starting to make some moves. You're starting to blow up.
Mhm.
You're starting to not only branch out but impact more of the world on a global scale. And so, congratulations to you. Really, really,
Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
just outstanding.
Thank you.
As you said, my name is Keeper Catran-Whitney. I live in LA. I'm on the West Coast. I'm actually in Woodland Hills. And I am the author of the book Helplessness: The Emotional Health Challenges Brothers Experience Once We Learn Our Sisters Have Been Sexually Abused by Our Parents. Now, before I go any further, let's just come to a full stop. This could be a very triggering topic for some people. And knowing the work that you do, I know that you're accustomed to dealing with, and people who are part of your audience are accustomed to this. But if you're having any challenges with this, because we are going to be talking about child sexual abuse and the impact on my family and the impact that it has on brothers once we learn, take a step back, protect yourself at all costs. And the podcast will be here. Omar's not going anywhere. So, with that said, helplessness, the emotional health challenges. Let me ask you this: have you ever considered what are the emotional struggles a brother has once he learns his sisters have been sexually abused, particularly in the home? Have that ever crossed your mind?
Mm.
Because if you're like most people, the answer is no. No one ever thinks about the emotional impact that brothers experience. And through my book, Helplessness, we not only explore it, but I answer the question through my family's struggle with it. And what I learned as a brother, because helplessness is from a brother's perspective. It is possibly the very first book of its kind. I've been told that hundreds of times. No one's ever
Mm.
heard about the impact on brothers from a brother's perspective. Most of the things out there are from a woman's perspective. This is from a brother's perspective and what we deal with. And so, that's what we'll be talking about. So, Omar, if you want me to give some context to all of this and give the the background story, I'm more than happy to do so. But I am here to be of service to you and your audience.
Of course, of course. Your book is heralded as a masterpiece, right? Actually,
Yeah.
it's a literary masterpiece. This is what they're saying, and some of these subjects are very hard. I know they are. I know, but I also know that the statistics out there, it's something like 8 or 9 out of 10, most people have been somehow touched by this deep, deep subject. Okay.
Right.
And yeah, I'd like to share some of those things a little bit later, but sure, I'd
Sure.
like you to just walk us through it, man. Give us a little bit
Sure.
more detail about what it entails.
Okay. Here we go. In 1971, my family, we were incredibly poor, living in Los Angeles, South Central. And we're a family of 10, 4 boys, 4 girls, my mother and my stepfather, and we could barely pay a $90 a month rent. We moved all the time. In fact, I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school.
Mm.
I lived in 21 different places before I moved out, homeless 3 times. And that was just my life, going into lots and things to find a mattress, to find a couch, to find a chair, to find a dining room set. That's what we did in order to get food. From time to time, I had to go into the streets and collect bottles and redeem them for some money and get a pound of rice or a pound of ground beef. That was not uncommon for me. That's what it was. Or go to a park on the weekend to get government cheese, get government powdered milk and powdered eggs. That was it. So, like I said, this is 1971. This is the year that Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 are really blowing up. I mean, they are everywhere. Every kid on the planet wants to be Michael Jackson and Jackson 5. When you turn on the radio, all you hear is ABC. I want you back. Who's loving you? I mean, it was magic. And so my mother, who was a really good singer, decided, let me see if I could make some extra money. And so she got together with her brother and her sister. But as good as they were, they couldn't make enough money. So one day, my mother hears her 8 kids, which we always did, singing around the house. And she looks at us and says, would you guys like to sing? Because as a singing family, we could make more money. We're like, yeah, of course. The next thing you know, Omar, the Whitney family is born. We are singing in after-hour nightclubs all over Los Angeles. 2 o'clock hits, we are in an after-hours club. And we are singing, we're dancing, we're doing everything. One Saturday afternoon, we are rehearsing for that evening show when the phone rings. My mother says, shh, just kind of keep it down. I'm going to answer the phone. And she picks up the telephone and says, hello? Who? And then she turns to us and says, shh, Michael Jackson's on the phone. Yeah, him, the soon-to-be king of pop, is on the phone. He's calling our house. How is this even possible? He wants to speak to the brother underneath me. And so my brother's child number 4. I am child number 2. He gets on the phone and he's all excited, hangs up the phone and screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of us. Says for us to keep going. We'll get there someday. My goodness. How can a poor family not build dreams on something like that? I mean, you're on your way. Jump cut 6 years later, everything we touched, Omar, turned to gold. Everything we touched. We were doing concerts, we were doing TV, we were in magazines. We made the coveted Billboard's top 100. Not once, not twice, but 3 times in 1977. We're with United Artists Records, and they're paying for everything. They're paying for our house, they're paying for our food, they're paying for our clothing, they're paying for our utilities, they're paying for everything. And we are just blowing up. 1977 is also the year Motown Records completed their exhaustive 3-year search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. And guess who they settled on? Us. We were the group to replace them. And where they had one lead singer and every now and then to get Jermaine come out, we had 9. All 8 of us kids could lead sing. All 8 of us danced. All 8 of us did everything, and including my mother. So you had, of the 10 of us, 9 of us, we were the show. It was amazing. And my brothers and I, we played instruments. So here we are, Motown, wanting to offer us the largest new artist contract they offered anyone at that time. My life was about to go from here to here like that. The Thursday or Friday that we are going to sign the contract, we're all excited. This is it. We know, we're just waiting for the call. The Saturday before, My sisters and my mother, for some reason, they're arguing all morning. It's just back and forth. There's arguing. They're going from one bedroom to the next, raised voices, screaming. I don't know. It's just the girls being the girls. As far as us boys are concerned, that's what's going on. See, me and my 7 brothers and sisters were 8 years apart. My mother had all 8 of us by the time she was 24. And so when you're that close in age and that many siblings, you're going to have these little rifts every now and then. It's just part of it just goes with the territory. I'm just thinking the girls are just doing their thing.
Mm.
And they pull mom in it, and mom, as far as I'm concerned, is trying to be the moderator, trying to, tap down all the emotions. So after they're done, I hear my oldest sister scream upstairs, "Boys, come downstairs, family meeting." I come running downstairs. Okay, this is it. I'm about to learn what I'm about to become rich, wealthy, famous. This is it. Finally. When I enter the living room, Omar, my oldest sister is pacing back and forth across the entryway, and she is pissed. Okay, she's still upset from what was going on this morning. Okay, so, her and mom, they got into it all the time. Not a big deal. But when I notice my 3 youngest sisters, the 3 youngest of us 8, the two youngest being twins, are sitting in the far corner of the couch, huddled together. And they're not saying a word, which is really, really odd, because all they ever did was laugh and joke and tease. It was constant, but there they were, quiet, looking scared. That's weird. My 2 youngest brothers are sitting at the other end of the couch. They're quiet, but they're like me. They're looking at the girls. What's going on? My oldest brother, the oldest of us 8, is standing behind my youngest sisters, and he and I lock eyes on each other. Okay, and we just kind of mouth, what's going on? I'm like, no, okay. So I sit between my 3 youngest sisters and my 2 youngest brothers on the couch. I sit in the middle, and I just wait. And within seconds, my mother and my stepfather enter the living room. Now, my stepfather is 6'6", 250 pounds. He's a mountain of a man. And he wore this huge Afro wig that put his height at 7 feet tall or higher. He was huge, just absolutely huge. We have this brown recliner in the middle of the living room that clashes violently against the green carpet. But when you are scrounging for furniture, you're going into the neighborhood, you're just getting whatever you can get. See, people think that we're living large, but we are far from it. We are going into the neighborhoods looking for mattresses, looking for a couch, as I said. So my stepfather walks and he sits down on the recliner, and he does something really odd. He puts his hands over his face and bends over like this. Is he sick? What's happening? Okay, so maybe he's not doing well. Okay. My mother, who is very effervescent and bubbly like her children, usually doesn't say a word. But she walks and stands in front of the huge window that overlooks the outside and turns around. And instead of having a smile on her face is stoic. And she scans the room, looking at her 8 children. But when she sees my oldest sister standing at the archway, they lock eyes on each other. And if words or looks could kill, rather, they would both of them would have been dead. They were looking daggers at each other. What the hell? Now, Omar, I told you, I live in Southern California. We get earthquakes all the time, okay? In fact, over the past 5 weeks, we've had 2 earthquakes a week. It has been nonstop. And I'm like, okay, the big one is coming. Another big one is coming. It has to be. Or hopefully it's relieving pressure. Let me be positive. It's relieving pressure on the fault line. But with those earthquakes, those are material in nature, meaning that they crack and they break freeways. They uproot trees. or they crack homes. And you could put those things back together with some rebar, some concrete, some spit, some gum, slap, slap, slap. You go back on the freeway, you walk back in the house, you mow the lawn. Oh, those are material. And you can come back from those unless your family has suffered a devastating loss. What we're talking about here are emotional earthquakes. My three brothers and I are about to be hit with three emotional earthquakes in a 10-minute span. We are about to hear the words no brother could ever expect to hear, the words no brother could ever prepare for. Earthquake number one, my mother finally speaks, and she says, your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. I'm stunned. I don't know what to say or do. I'm about 15 or 16, and I'm emotionally paralyzed. It's the last thing I'm expecting to hear. I don't know what PTSD is at that time, but it is attacking me from all sides. Shock, disbelief, fear, anxiety, confusion, crisis, depression, all of it is swarming on me, and I don't know what to do. I am literally rocked backward. My mother's speaking, Omar, but I'm slow on the uptake, as anyone would be, because you're trying to process all of this. But what I hear are three words, and they're three words I have never forgotten. I hear liquor store, I hear park, and I hear apartment. And I am dropping emotionally, and so are my three brothers. That's earthquake number one. Stunned silence is in the room. My mother speaks again, and she says, I have known all along. What? Wait a minute. What did you just say? You've known what all along? The chasm that I'm falling into, this void, this abyss, is so dark it has no bottom. I'm just dropping, and there's nothing to slow my descent emotionally. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. As bad as those two earthquakes were, number three was the one that locked me and my brothers down. And it is the one that usually locks all brothers down when we hear about the sexual molestation that is happening to our sisters, particularly if it is happening in the home. It is the one that paralyzes us for years. Earthquake number three is my oldest sister, who is pacing back and forth, turns around and points at her four innocent brothers and says, you can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so tight, that were so much fun, that were everything, lay on the living room floor, broken. How does a brother come back from that when the exposure of the crime has been brought to light? There's usually three groups who are addressed. There's the predator, there's the empowerer, or those people who are empowering the action, and obviously for us, it was my sisters. There was their thing, you know, those are the three groups that are usually discussed. But here's the thing. No one ever asks about the brothers. No one ever asks, are you okay? Do you need to talk? Is there anything you need? Because when my sister, or when sisters tell their brothers, you can't talk to us, what we hear is we don't matter. Our feelings don't matter. We are not invited to the conversation. Go away. I'm going to put you in a box, put you in a closet, and leave you there. Never talk to us about it. And it is always the assumption, well, by most people, is brothers aren't impacted.
Mm.
We are impacted. It's just that no one ever asks us. They think because we're collateral damage or just because we're boys, it can't be that difficult on us. But I'm here to tell you it is very difficult, because in this, what happens is we are told that we cannot participate in the conversation, but we are expected to answer for our non-participation.
Mm.
It is a paradox that should not exist, but yet it does, because our sisters, and in our case, we would hear over time, how come you didn't hear me crying? How come you didn't see my tears? How come I come? And when we want to talk about it, we're not allowed. And the talking for brothers is the beginning of our healing, because in 77, you could go to a bookstore, you could find a book written by women or an article written by women. You may even get a documentary, you may even get a movie about women who've suffered sexual abuse.
Mm.
You could find some counseling resources, not as many as you can today, but there were steps that women could take that could help them navigate their trauma. With
Mm.
brothers, absolutely nothing. And here's the thing, that's the way it is today.
Mm.
There is still nothing that brothers can glom onto. There is still
Mm.
no one. This is the third interview I've done today.
Mm.
And the previous two were with therapists. And
Mm.
they admitted, like, I have never heard of this. I've never even thought about the impact of brothers. How could I have missed it?
Mm.
How could
You
I
know.
have just thought that the brothers will be okay? No,
Mm.
we're not. We are carrying all of this darkness, all of this burden in silence, and the shock. And
Mm.
we start to get the guilt. We start to get the self blame and the
Mm.
anger and the betrayal and the shame, and obviously the stigma associated with it.
Mm.
Who are we supposed to talk to? Me and my brothers, Omar, we didn't talk to each other about it for 45 years,
Mm.
because our relationship with our sisters, we are hanging by a thread, okay? And if we took any steps to try to talk to them about it, we knew the logical outcome would be cut the thread, and now we are out in the galaxy floating emotionally, never to have contact with our sisters ever again.
Mm. Mm.
And as we went through this, as I experienced all this, one of my sisters I still do not speak to today because of all this. So what you do is you elevate conversations. That's what you and your organization just do absolutely beautifully. You do so well. You look
Mm.
to elevate feelings, you look to elevate emotions, so we
Mm.
men could have these conversations. I look to elevate the voices of men and brothers in the child sexual abuse space, to say we belong. We deserve to have our voices heard. Because if we're going to talk about healing the family, you can't heal most of it. You have to heal all of it. And all of it means closing the loop that
Mm.
allows brothers to be part of the conversation. Otherwise, as I said, emotionally, we are damaged. Psychologically, we are
Mm.
damaged. Self esteem, self worth, the eroding of trust is tremendous. So that is the context of helplessness, which is a 3-book series. Helplessness. I'm writing hopefulness now. How do you go from helplessness to hopefulness? And then the
Mm.
third book will be happiness. How did I get to where I'm at today, which
Mm.
includes having my sisters back in my life? How did all of that happen?
That's incredible. That's wow. It's it's quite intense. I can tell you that. I'm actually looking at some listeners currently that are tapping in, and none of them have dropped off because
Mm,
it's quite like hypnotizing to hear some of these things, especially for those that have experienced some things.
mhm,
And your story is so powerful. It it has me thinking also of we do some deep work here too at OMZL,
Hmm.
and it's deep work. We're not therapists, and we let people know that we're not any, no. But if you want some holistic healing, to
Yeah.
tap in somewhere safe where you can say things that will not, be spoken out with anything attached to you and those type of things, that's what me and my wife are doing. It's a calling.
Hmm.
It's not about the money. It's not about that. It's not about the fame. No, there's nothing about that. It's about helping people on a deep level. And how we came to that notion, uh, we experience some things in our lives that help us to tap into that. But what I want to tell you, Keeper, is that you made me think of a one brother who came through, and we were in a deep session, and there was some things on his chest so heavy he just wanted to get it off. And when he spoke out exactly that an uncle was molesting his sister while he was there in the very same room, and he was walking around with this. Brother Keeper, when he spoke, it's like he sucked all the air right out of the room. It was as if time, I kid you not, it was as if time just froze for that very moment. And he started breaking down, and me and my wife was on him, and just, it was quite intense, bro. So yeah.
I understand that story so well. How the entire book came about for me was the great author and speaker Lisa Nichols was having an event in San Diego, and so I was
Mm.
invited to go, and because it was how to write a book in 20 minutes, and so I went.
Lisa Nichols, yeah, she's
Yeah.
powerful. We know of
Oh,
her.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. She is quite amazing. She really is.
Mhm, mhm.
And so I was somehow called up to talk about the book that I wanted to write. Omar, this is not the book I went there to write. I went there to write a
Mm,
different book.
mm,
But when I got up on stage, helplessness is what poured out. We're in
mm,
a room of some 700 people, another 6,000 online. And when I told them what the book was about, it was silent. No one said a word. They just looked, but I could hear the sniffles.
mm,
When I
mm,
went back to my
mm, mm,
seat,
mm,
I think, okay, I that came out. I've been having this tug like you. It's a calling. I've been pulled to do this. I have to do it from a brother's perspective, so other men will know they're not alone. We're
mm,
not the only ones. When I
mm,
got to my seat, I was swarmed by women,
mm,
and I'm looking up, and they're just, thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish my brother had known. I wish I had talked to my brother. I should have said something. Now, how you've got to complete this book. You've got to complete this book. It was too much.
mm,
So I got up and I left the rooms, and left the room, and I closed the double doors, and I'm standing out in the hallway, and I'm just hyperventilating because that was the last thing that I was expecting. And then the double doors burst open and more women poured out. I was swarmed. Women saying the same thing. You must write this book. I wish I had known. I wish I had spoken to my brother. All of those sort of things. But it was
mm,
three women, separate and apart from each other,
mm, mm,
who told me the thing that landed the most. These three different women came up to me and said, Keeper, I wish I had your book. I didn't tell my brother. He was so devastated, so distraught emotionally, he didn't know what to do. He felt he was to blame because he probably felt like me. I think what it means to be a brother, if you have sisters, is it's your job to protect their honor.
mm,
That's just me. And you do that as best you can, but you can only do it if you know the honor needs to be protected, right?
mhm,
These three men did not. And because they did not, they took their lives
mm,
because the pain was too much. They felt so much self blame, so much betrayal. They took their lives.
mhm,
And for brothers, that's not always the case, but the trauma, the burden that we carry in silence, like you said at your event, it just sucked the air out of the room because as
mhm,
men, we rarely recognize the opportunity to be vulnerable when we need to.
Mm,
We're getting to be much better at it,
mm,
and a lot of it is just due to social grooming of boys. You
mm,
can't be
mm.
you can't show any emotion.
Right.
You can't show any tears. But the
That
thing that really landed for me was a conversation I had with my father-in-law 4 years ago.
mm. Okay.
Because
Can we just hold up there? Can we and we
yeah,
let's take a deep breath together on three. One, two, three. I did want to say that I had spoken to you a little bit offline about the men's retreats that we do, and
mhm,
I did want to take a moment just to mention some of those things, being that
yeah,
it's quite relevant, uh, in the conversation that we're having. So we usually do these small um, retreats, right? We like to call them trainings. That's really what they
yeah,
are. They're trainings. Then it's not a retreat where you resort and you eat nice food and you lounge and sit around. There's lots of things going on there, and it's hard things too. Like we do breath work, right? We do ice water cold plunge. We go to a river. We get into during the winter time. We do that also. We do yoga. We do meditation. We do journaling, right? We introduce different pillars of strength, right? It's a whole workshop. It's a teaching. It's quite intense, and all kinds of things come out. I mean,
hmm,
if I could tell you, we could be here all night about some of the things that you wouldn't believe what guys say. They look fine, natural, good. They're good, cool. They're even cool. They look nice, dress nice, talk nice, dance nice, everything nice. But we provide this platform for men to get these things out. It makes me think of another brother. He shared some things with us that he said, my wife doesn't even know this. And we were thinking, he loves her. He has kids with her. And he did not, and he's sharing it with us. It's quite intense,
yeah,
and it's life transforming, right? So we've done the 3 days, like the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes we start Thursday, we end Monday, depending on the time that we have. And then we had the first international retreat, right? Because we're doing our best to take brothers out into another location, right? Because
right,
we had one up in Pennsylvania, which is about maybe 2.5 hours away. And it gave a brother an opportunity to just get up and leave if he wanted to, you
hmm,
see. But in
hmm,
an international location, where you gonna go? You're not going nowhere. We're gonna face this together, and,
right,
and we're with them all the way. So we're having another one in 2025. It'll probably be in about maybe 7 or 8 months from now, right around there. We have quite a number of things going on, by the way. But we're having these men's retreats, and we're looking for different locations, even here in the States.
hmm,
There's some other people that are doing wonderful, wonderful things. There is Taino Woods, which they're located up here in the New York area, Pennsylvania. I haven't been to their location, but they have a piece of land, and they step into the ancestors of the I want to say Puerto Ricans,
hmm,
or because Taino is really a word that they use for many different tribes that were in the islands, but they focus on some of those things: the belief systems, the language, the culture, the food, music, and those type of things with strong, strong, powerful teachings. So I just want to mention them. They're a great supporter of OMZL as well.
hmm.
But yeah, just wanted to give that little commercial break right there. and I
No,
and I definitely want
that's
you to.
amazing.
I thank you so much, brother. I definitely want you to get back to that conversation that you had. What did you say about 4 months ago?
It was 4 years ago with my father-in-law, because oftentimes, invariably, people look at the subtitle of the book, the emotional experience, brothers experience, and that brothers go through the trauma. And when they see the word brothers, they'll oftentimes they'll say, "So let me ask you something. Are you talking about just black guys?" And I said, "No, no." I said, "You're looking at me, a black guy, and you're assigning race to something that is not about race."
Mm-hmm.
This conversation, what I'm talking about here, crosses race, religion, politics, wealth, education, social economics. It crosses borders, it crosses waters. It is worldwide
I love that.
epidemic that this happens. And so
Mhm.
they and I come back over and I said, "So let me ask you this: if I was a white guy, would you even ask me that question?"
Mm.
And they sheepishly say, "No." I said, "So do you see what you're doing here? This is not a black thing. This is
Mhm.
a human thing." And
Mhm.
so I say, "Let me give you the example that proves the point."
Mhm.
My father-in-law, before he passed away at 95,
Mm.
know this, he's white, he's
Mhm.
Jewish, he grew
Mhm.
up in New York, in Brooklyn. He went to he graduated college. He had a very stable home. He upper middle class. He was the complete opposite of me, right?
Mhm.
Because you know my story. The complete
Mhm.
opposite.
Mhm.
What we
Mhm.
have in common is my wife, his daughter.
Mhm. Mhm.
One day he calls me and he says, "I want you to come to the house. I want to talk to you." I'm saying, "Okay, Dad, I'll be over there in a few minutes. I'm on the way."
Mhm.
I'm thinking, okay, what did I say something? Did I do something? You know what? I don't know. So I get to the house, and keep in mind, we have a great relationship here. And my wife and I, we've been married 38 years this year. And so we have a great relationship, but we are different. And it was a relationship he and I had that really began to be one of like father and son. So I get to the house, Omar, and the first thing I notice is that my mother-in-law is not there, which was really odd because they did everything together.
Mhm.
So I walk in and he says, "Come here and have a seat here at the dining room table." I said, "Cool." So I say, "Sit down." I say, "Dad, is everything okay?" And he looks at me and he says, "I want you to know I understand."
Mhm.
"You understand what?"
Mhm.
"I want you to know I understand." And then he starts patting a book in front of him.
Mhm.
I didn't notice it at first. And I look down and it's my book, Helplessness.
Mhm.
"You understand what?"
Mhm.
He then says, "I'm going to tell you something
Mhm.
I have only told one person. That's your mother in law, my wife. I'm going to tell you this, but you cannot tell anyone until after I pass away." Now, he's 95 and he knows he's got a couple of years left. Everyone knows. So he's on his way to his next journey. I said, "Okay." And I don't know what's about to come. I
Mhm.
don't know what he's about to say. He says, "When I was a little boy, about 15 or 16 years old, we lived in Brooklyn and we lived in a two-story apartment. Our
Mhm.
best friends, that family, were upstairs and we were downstairs. We were so close that we never locked our doors. We could go in and out of each other's apartments all day, 24/7, 365. It made no difference. I mean, that's how close we were. One day, my mother or my father, I don't remember, sent me upstairs to get something. So I go upstairs. He's about 15 or 16 years old.
Mhm.
He goes into the apartment of their friends and no one's there. So he looks around. Why did they send me up here? And then he hears something coming from one of the bedrooms. He walks to the bedroom and he opens the door. He sees the father molesting his sister.
Mhm.
And he stands there in the doorway, frozen. He doesn't know what to do.
Mm.
After a few seconds, he turns around, walks out the apartment, goes back downstairs, goes to his apartment, and doesn't tell his parents anything. He doesn't know what to do. When his sister comes downstairs, she never says a word, but they made eye contact when he was
Mm.
upstairs. So she knows that he saw, and he
Mm.
knows that she knows, but they didn't say a word to each other ever.
Mm.
My father in law is now crying.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then he says, it happened again 2 months later, and I did nothing again.
Mm.
He says, I want you to know I understand.
Mm.
I understand. And I'm like, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. And he says, it's not. I want you to know it's okay. He's like, and he's a mess now.
Mm.
And what struck me, Omar, was here's a man 95 years old. We are the complete opposite. And
Mm.
yet at 95, the burden is still so much for him. He's
Mm.
still carrying this. He wants someone to hear him. He wants someone to understand. He's a brother still in pain, and he was never able to talk about it. As we brothers, that's what happens. There's no place for us to go.
Mm.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
And my father-in-law is telling me, here's the other part. He didn't talk to his white Jewish son-in-law.
Mm.
He didn't talk to his white Greek Catholic son-in-law.
Mm.
He's talking to me, his
Mm.
black son-in-law.
Mm. Mm.
He wants me to tell him, I hear you. It's okay. He didn't need to say a word. He's successful. He's built great businesses. He doesn't
Mm.
owe anyone a damn thing. He
Mm.
doesn't owe anyone an explanation about anything, but he's
Mm.
feeling it. And
Mm.
he knows what my book is about, and he read it anyway. And then he calls
Mm.
me to just, so it's just the two of us to tell me, I understand, hear me, hear me, hear me. Please tell me that you hear me.
Mm. Mm.
And so that's, when
Mm.
people ask me, is this just a thing about black guys? It's like, no, this crosses everything. There are men
Mhm.
walking, certainly here in the United States,
Mm.
that are carrying this burden in silence. And it is a heavy burden because part of
Mm.
what we do is we imagine what our sisters have gone through. And when my sisters, one of them read my book, she said, the part that you described about me, even though I didn't tell you, was exactly correct. That's exactly what he did.
Mm.
So my journey is, with helplessness to hopefulness to happiness, it's about the 45 years to get to my sisters, where I eventually
Mm.
got back to them.
Mm.
And three of my sisters actually contribute
Mm.
to helplessness. They've written parts of the book.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Two of my brothers also. So you get a full family view, but
Mm.
for me to find the courage to ask my sisters, would you be willing to do this? Because I
Mm.
think our family's tragedy doesn't need to end that way. It could be something that could be helpful
It
for
could be.
people.
That's right. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
And so that's how I came at them. And asking them was, and I know we don't have a lot more time, but asking them was the scariest thing I ever did in my life. Well, no, the second
Mhm.
scariest thing. The first was I went to such a dark place
Mm.
that I gave my stepfather 24 hours to get out of our life. Otherwise, I was going to kill him.
Mm.
And that's because the emotional stress was so difficult and I could not get that need met. And that's a part of it. It used to be the subtitle, The Emotional Health Challenges Brothers Experience, but then I realized that wasn't it.
Mm.
It was not the mental health challenges. It's the
Mm.
emotional health that we're dealing with. And no one
Mm.
ever wants to talk the emotional health.
Mhm.
See, what,
Mm.
what you do, the work
Mm.
that you do, and
Mm.
Amziel does, you guys get to the emotional stuff, the stuff that
Mm.
people run away from.
Mhm.
Because emotional is it's feelings, it's shared experience. That's what you all do so well. It is community based. And when you can't meet that need, you go to the next place, which is why I don't think most people deal with mental health challenges. I think most people deal with emotional health challenges. And I
Mm.
realized that's what I was dealing with maybe 10 years ago.
Mm.
Because, when you can't get that emotional need met, that emotional support, you go to the mental, which in my opinion is up here.
Mm,
It's logic based, it's alone, it's isolation. And when we go there, particularly as men, it is a dangerous place to be because we start putting the pieces to the puzzle that make it logical for us to do something oftentimes not safe. And that's what I did. I went to a mental place and realized the only way for me to help my sisters, even though I can't talk to them, is to kill my stepfather or he's going to kill me. And I was so good with it.
mm,
I was
mm,
so okay with it because one way or the other, he was going to be gone, even if I was gone. He
mm.
was going to go to jail for murder. I'm like, cool, he's out of their life. Or I'm going to kill him, but I'm going to go to jail for murder and
Right.
I'm cool.
Mm, mm,
But
mm,
how warped is that? But I was a
mm,
brother alone. I didn't
mm,
know what to do. And so,
mm, mm,
you know,
mm.
I would have, it would have been a perfect person for the work that you do.
Right,
Because
right.
yeah, this is a conversation, the impact on brothers, no one talks about it. It would have been something, just a brand new thing for people, which is usually what it is. They go, that aha moment, like, shh, I never thought
Mm.
about the brothers in this situation.
That's true.
So
I do have a maybe. Yeah, let's go with a couple of questions, right?
yeah, yeah.
Wow, I tell you, I'm trying to catch my breath, brother. I I don't even know what to say. Like the words just escape because my I think of myself too. My family has been riddled with that. You know, on my father's side of the family, there was a generational alcoholism. And when you get that spirit, right? Because alcohol is a spirit, right? Agul, it's an
Yeah.
Arabic term of alcohol, agul. They know that's why when you go to liquor store, it says wines and spirits. When you get that spirit, that
Mm.
energy
Oh,
in you,
okay.
you do things that you wouldn't normally do, right? Most people are sleeping in this life. And then when you add alcohol in the mix, they're in a coma. Like they do things, there's people in jail right now. They're serving life term sentences. They don't even remember what happened. They don't even know. They were told what happened, um
Hmm.
but yeah, getting back, yeah, my family has been riddled with that too, you know. It's just terrible. And we had to live with that
Yeah.
also coming up. I grew up in a family where, I was 5 or 6 years old in a family function, like a Thanksgiving or Christmas, and then a fist fight would break out right in the living room. So talk about PTSD, talk about trauma.
We had that. We
It would
had
have been.
that. My father
Sorry.
died of of an alcohol cocaine overdose.
Mm,
My stepfather, he had his challenges with drugs as well. And so, brother,
mm,
I hear you on that.
mhm,
And
mhm, mhm,
fights breaking out, people losing their damn mind, and
mhm,
as a child,
mhm.
there's nothing that you can do except observe.
Yeah,
That's it.
and then I want to tell you that it would have been a surprise for me not to get involved with heavy narcotics and be an alcoholic, you know, in as myself, but in the past, right? I've
Hmm.
passed those things, and that's why I'm able to come to brothers and look them straight in the eye and tell them, I know what you're going through. You
Hmm.
see, because I've been to those AA meetings and all. They're okay, but that was always one of the big things where people in the room were always asking the facilitator, "Have you ever taken a drink before?" And often it was no. And they were like, "How could you help me
Is
if you
that
don't
right?
even know how it is to get up in the morning with that thing in the pit of your stomach, like yearning, and then you do things that you wouldn't normally do. You do acts that you wouldn't normally do. You know that
Hmm.
is morally incorrect, but it's just that energy that you have attached to you that's making you do some of those things. So another question that I had was, I looked you up online and it was the Whitney family,
Hmm.
right? Right. And this is what makes your story quite bizarre, is that you guys were on this trajectory like a rocket into the stratosphere and beyond. And my question to you is, Is it because of some of those things that took place? This is how things started to break down, and did they break down quickly, or how did that look?
That is a very good question, because the reason we got to that 10-minute conversation when everything broke, my oldest sister decided before we did the Motown deal that it was time for the boys to know what has been going on.
Mm,
She did not want us to do that deal because imagine this is, I learned later, we are superstars. And then this story comes out. We would have been part of a VH1 Behind the Music documentary today.
mm,
We'd
mhm,
have been a BET documentary, or, an
mhm,
HBO special right
mhm,
now. And the
mhm,
traumatizing nature of that, of hearing about it over and over and over again, we would never escape. And so
mhm,
she did not want to do that. And she felt it was time for the boys to know. It has
mhm,
been going on for far too long. Part of
mhm,
the challenge for her was she needed to protect herself and her three youngest sisters. And I get that. But to assume that we boys have absolutely no damage is one that was not understood.
mhm,
And oftentimes when I'm speaking, Omar, what invariably a woman will say to me, you know what, your sister's right. It didn't happen to you boys. It happened to them. Yes, I know that, it happened to everyone in the family, but it really happened only to them. And I will say, no, it happened to all of us. We just didn't know about it, but it was happening to us. However, perhaps this will help you.
mhm, mhm,
6 years before my sisters were sexually abused, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months.
mm,
So I do get it.
mm,
And it's not something that I'm proud to say, but what it does do, it lets people know I understand both sides, the damaged and the collateral damage side.
mhm,
And that's when the woman who asked me the question, she'll say, oh, I didn't know. And I'll say, you shouldn't have to know. This is not a battle of whose trauma is worse.
mhm,
This is
mhm,
not a battle of because I'm a woman, my trauma trumps your trauma. Your trauma is irrelevant,
mhm,
because what you're saying is that as a brother, I'm taboo. I'm an
mhm,
inconvenient truth. Just go over there.
mhm,
No. And that's when the conversation really shifts. Oh,
mhm,
he really knows what it's like to be sexually abused, not just
mhm,
a brother who learned about it.
mhm,
So,
mhm, mhm,
um, it gives me a lot of credibility
mhm,
in a weird way, but it is the reality, and I embrace it. I accept it. It is a part of who I am, and I am a
mhm,
survivor
mhm, mhm, mhm,
myself.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's to answer your question. It was my sister decided it was time for the boys to know, and that's when everything fell apart.
I see. I see. I see. And as you kept growing up, things started to fall apart as time went by. The deal, the Motown, Michael Jackson, the whole the limelight, and
All of
just
it's
is
gone.
started dissolving. Yeah, because I've seen quite a number of pictures, and there's
Yeah.
about eight people or nine on stage. Like you guys were
There's
like all over the place. Huge family, man.
there was this. We were 10. Now here's the one of
Mm,
the
mm,
oddities of our story. The Motown deal falls apart, but we are still under contract with United Artists. We still owe them $250,000 for the album that they produced. So we have to keep singing if we're going to eat.
mm,
We're going to have to keep singing if we're going to keep a roof over our head. So a couple of my sisters left immediately, but the rest of us, we recognize we have to keep going. How are we going to do this?
mm,
How are we going to make this? We are contractually bound.
mm, mm,
We can't pay them back if we're not performing. We can't eat if we're not performing. We have no heat. We have no
mm,
food. So
mm,
we have to keep going.
mm,
And we're trying to navigate all this in the midst of all of this. And that's where we would hear from time to time, how come you boys didn't do this? How come you boys didn't do that? And we're just trying to keep our mouth shut,
mm,
because we know if we say something, everything is done.
mm,
Because each brother has a unique relationship with each of our sisters and with each other. Everyone in the family has a different relationship, and that just adds some of the complexities to it. And then when your 8 children, have an independent relationship that's different and apart
mm,
from the other children with the parents, who are the most important people we know at that time, the most powerful people.
mm, mm,
We're listening to what they say.
mm,
And
mm,
so there was
mm,
so much hanging over us. The music part just brings a lot of color to this,
mhm,
and I recognize it for what it is, but it does help explain the nature of the trauma, just how
mm.
devastating that it can be.
Yeah, and then doing your best to continue to move on, like, oh my God, it's crazy. Okay, the next thing, because we are, a little bit on time too. I don't want to keep people too long, but I think it's an important question. And the question is, what about now, Keeper Cantrell Whitney? What about now? Like, what are the tools? How do you cope? Or is it the writing of the book alone is quite, impressive, bro? Because you're right, and people are right too. This book needs to be out. It needs to be heard and read. And trust me, I'll be getting on that book, and hopefully I'll be gifting it to some people too. But what about now? What are the codes? What are your tools? What are your coping, or yeah, please share.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out because, like I said, back then there were no support systems for brothers. I know you mentioned the 12-step programs. Hell, we don't even have a one-step program today. We are still so far out of the loop. But I'm looking to make that change. What I realized, Omar, was I had to accept that I was a victim.
Mm, mm,
Without that acceptance, there was very little chance of survival for me. There was very little chance of healing. And once I just accepted, okay, I am a victim, and now I could go into that space, I am now a survivor of it.
mm, mm,
And I think that's oftentimes the hardest part, especially for men emotionally, is accepting that we are vulnerable, that we are not perfect, that we are not King Kong every day, every moment, you know, that our job is not just hunt, hunt, hunt. We can be vulnerable, and that's where a lot of our strength comes from. Once that happened, I then was able to accept, okay, what has happened to me is a part of me. It is a part of my DNA. It's into my marrow. It is deep. And like DNA that self-replicates in ways we don't understand, if I don't get a handle on this could have replicated into ways I don't understand, which is usually for people who deal with this, your relationships suffer. Be it for men, the relationship with their sisters suffer, and just women in general. So I had to accept that it is me. So, and then I had to move to the next, for me, the hardest step of all. I had to find someone to talk to.
mm, mm,
Now, who do you talk to in a sea of humanity
mm.
when there is no one to talk to?
Right,
You
right.
got to find that at least one person. If you could find a group, that's
Mm,
even better.
mm,
But if you can find one person, and it's really hard because, like I said, no one wants the stigma of someone else knowing what you have experienced. No one, that's hard.
right, right,
But that's what
right.
we've got to do, right? We've got to
Yeah.
be willing to step up, and you offer that safe space
Mm, mm, mm,
with your
mhm,
group. You offer
mm,
safe harbor for men, and we need more of these things. We need you out there in a much bigger way. We need
mm,
Amziel out there in a
mhm,
much bigger way. And
mhm,
luckily for us, you are taking those steps, that you're starting to go
mm,
international.
mm,
Because
mm,
without that safe harbor,
mm,
men just aren't going to talk.
mhm,
But when we
mhm,
are together and we start peeling back layers, which is what happened for me. Once I was able to peel back some layers, a lot of
mm,
my shame and guilt just washed away because I had to figure that out on my own.
mm. That's incredible. There was I forgot her name. She's a Buddhist monk, and she went through some abuse with her husband and stuff. And her name escapes me right now, but one of her famous quotes is that the only way through pain is going through it, not around it and not over it. That's the only way. That's it. Some people were like, because that's what we do all day, right? We're just
Right,
pushing
right,
things down, pushing and stuffing them down and masking them, and then putting things on top of them, layers and boxes and makeup and music and
Yeah.
sex and alcohol and
Right.
job and money and car, like we just, to keep it down. And then at some point it comes up, and then you see that there's rich guys go to the top of the building and jump off, and they got it all. Why? Because they don't
Hmm.
have that platform where they can speak up and say, hey, this happened and I'm walking around with this and I'm going to put it down, I'm going to step into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, speak about it.
They will go to that mental place and they're alone, but I'm saying you need to go to the emotional place and have the conversation with someone like you.
Hmm,
You
hmm,
know,
hmm. For sure, for sure,
that,
for sure.
that there's a book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read that book
Yes,
in
yes.
'95. I'm like, okay, that book changed me because that's
Mm-hmm.
really what you're saying. You know, the only way to get through is to go through. You have
That's
to
right.
feel the fear,
Mm-hmm.
accept it for what it is, and
Hmm,
do the damn thing anyway. Just
hmm,
go do it and let
yeah.
the chips fall where they may. And it's empowering when you do.
Yep, yep. That book is powerful too. I know that one, and there's other ones out there too. I always encourage the brothers to read. I ask them when I first meet them, "What book are you reading?" And they usually go, "Ah, I haven't read a book since high school." Well, then you're missing it. Because books help. They expand your consciousness. They lift your vibration. We need to have high vibration, and books are like windows, right? Your book, like Keeper, your brother Keeper, your book, The Helplessness, right? You could find it on Amazon, actually, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Right. So this book, Helplessness, it's a window where you get to open the window and you look in the window and you get to look around and you get to see those things that only you saw, but we can see those things too. And then that will help us go through those things that we are stuffing inside of
Yeah.
us.
It allows you to live through me. You know,
Mm,
that's the great thing about books. You can live through the author. And if it has something to do with trauma or something
mm,
like that, you
mm,
learn that you're not alone as you read. It's like, oh, that person is sharing exactly what I've been dealing with, and then you
mhm,
start to feel that okay, because I'm not alone, there is hope for me.
mhm,
Because hope, that's really what my story ends up being. It's a book of hope and triumph and survivorship and resilience because I was able to get back to my sisters, and so I realized,
mhm,
oh, there's so much hope
mm, mm,
in
mm, mm,
other men reading this, and that's what I have
mm,
found to be probably the greatest benefit. The thing that gives me the most joy is other men saying, "Dude, I read it.
mm,
I thought I was by myself. I thought I was the only one going through this."
mm, 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 mm. Turns out you're not alone, right? And
Yeah,
then
my
and then
father-in-law, right? My white 95-year-old Jewish father-in-law made that
mm,
absolutely clear. Like,
right,
nah,
yep,
I
crystal,
thought I
crystal
was
clear.
alone. Yes,
Right,
like,
right, right.
no, he carrying that for 80 years. It's like, oh
Yep.
my gosh.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, and then I think about the powerful choices that you've made, because you could have just been at 95 too and
Mhm.
said something to some kid or wrote a note or maybe said nothing. You would have been like, hey, it's not important for me to. Instead, you grab one of the loudest microphones in the room, which is a book that has. I know people who are still waiting to get their book on Amazon. And here you are, you have a incredible, powerful book, for people to just have access to it. It's incredible, brother. I
Well, I
commend you
appreciate
just
it.
tremendously, bro.
Just doing
Thank,
my
thank
best
you
to
so
help.
much. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for your story. Wow, just incredible. But we've been on for a little bit more than an hour, and I like to just end it at that. And perhaps I can check back with you maybe in a couple of months or so, see how you're doing, and maybe get you back on the show, and yeah,
Well, you
see how
get me
things are
out
coming
to one of
along.
your retreats, I think,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
would
about.
be
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I'm I'm down. Yeah, really.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right. We'll be in touch then. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, brother Omar. Thanks.
Peace and love. Peace and love. Wow. There you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that a great deal. I know that was a tough one. It was tough for me too. Yeah, lots of emotions inside. And now I have to decompress, go upstairs, to my wife and hug them and kiss them and keep them safe and burn some sage, and say my prayers too, because there's some darkness out here. But it's great to know that there's brothers out here that are really, really putting in the work and helping us. And before you go, I just want to let you know that the ice plunge that we have here at OMZL, we'll be having one very soon. I'll be announcing that. And if you mention that you've listened to the podcast, we'll give you 50% off just for showing up, man. That way we can help you in that deep, deep, deep way. Okay, so there you have it, guys. Peace and love. Thank you.